Good morning, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. Bonjour. Yesterday marked the latest in President Trump's unprecedented series of U.S. tariffs that are designed to reshape the international trading system. The ambition of these measures is enormous. The effects on the global economy will be monumental. We received confirmation that the latest reciprocal tariffs will not be imposed on Canada. At the same time, President Trump confirmed that the tariffs announced last week against our auto industry will come in, and indeed have come into effect today. So while it's progress that further tariffs were not imposed on Canada yesterday, the President's actions will reverberate here in Canada and across the world. Three different sets of U.S. tariffs remain in place and will continue to pose significant threats to Canadian workers and Canadian businesses. And while they have been imposed under different premises, some things are consistent. They are all unjustified, unwarranted, and in our judgment, misguided. And we are already seeing the consequences. Just last evening, workers from Unifor Local 444, with whom I met last week, learned that their auto assembly plant in Windsor will be shutting down for at least the next 2 weeks. That's 3,600 workers who are now out of work, not by their choice. Workers who now worry how they're going to put food on the table and pay their bills. I and my government stand in solidarity with those workers in Windsor and all those workers hurt by President Trump's tariffs. And that's why we committed from the very start that all, and I repeat, all of our tariff proceeds will go to protect workers affected by the tariffs. Les premiers tarifs ont été annoncés en février. Après une brève pause, ils ont été remis en place en mars. Selon l'administration Trump, ils ont été mis en place en réponse au trafic de fentanyl qui aurait lieu à notre frontière commune. Pourtant, 0,20% du fentanyl qui entre aux États-Unis vient du Canada. Et malgré ce fait, le gouvernement précédent a agi dès décembre avec un plan frontalier robuste d'1,3 milliard de dollars. 1,3 milliard de dollars. Un plan qui implique de nouveaux outils pour nos forces policières, des hélicoptères, des drones et des équipes canines pour détecter et empêcher le trafic de fentanyl et des produits chimiques utilisés pour produire cette drogue. That plan is working. As U.S. Customs and Border Protection themselves have acknowledged, there was a 97% drop in fentanyl seized at our shared border in January compared to December. In fact, Canada was not mentioned once in the United States annual report that lists the biggest threat to that country. Just last night, the U.S. Senate made it clear that these tariffs are a mistake. The Senate voted to repeal them in a symbolic but important assertion of both fact and solidarity. The second set of U.S. tariffs were imposed in March on steel and aluminum imports from around the world, including Canada. Canada has long been the United States' main supplier of these materials, materials that are vital to building Americans' homes, their cars, their bridges, their consumer goods, and so much more. These materials are vital to powering America's economy. The President pursued similar tariffs on steel and aluminum during his first term, a process which led to thousands of lost jobs in America. Then, as now, those tariffs were in clear violation of trading agreements. Today it's CUSMA, an agreement that the President himself negotiated and promoted during his first term. An agreement that we in Canada have upheld in good faith. Last week, the President and his administration announced their third set of tariffs, this time against auto imports primarily from Mexico and Canada. In the year I was born, Canada and the United States signed the Auto Pact, an agreement that ended auto tariffs between our nations and began a 60-year period, you can guess my age, a 60-year period of close cooperation, partnership, job growth, and prosperity. And that era has now ended unless the United States and Canada can agree on a new comprehensive approach. Yesterday's actions by the U.S. administration, while not specifically targeting Canada, will rupture the global economy and adversely affect global economic growth. The global economy is fundamentally different today than it was yesterday. The system of global trade anchored on the United States that Canada has relied on since the end of the Second World War, a system that, while not perfect, has helped to deliver prosperity for our country for decades, is over. Our old relationship of steadily deepening integration with the United States is over. The 80-year period when the United States embraced the mantle of global economic leadership, when it forged alliances rooted in trust and mutual respect, and championed the free and open exchange of goods and services, is over. Well, this is a tragedy. It is also the new reality. We must respond with both purpose and force. We are a free, sovereign, and ambitious country. We are masters in our own home. Nous sommes maîtres chez nous. Nous contrôlons notre destin. Nous allons tracer notre propre voie. Nous choisissons de nous battre, de protéger et de bâtir. Nous allons nous battre contre ces tarifs jusqu'à ce qu'ils soient annulés. Nous allons protéger nos travailleurs et nos entreprises pendant cette période difficile. Surtout, nous allons bâtir une économie canadienne renouvelée. Nous allons bâtir un Canada fort. We will fight to bring each of these tariffs to an end. We're fighting in courts, challenging that these tariffs have been illegally imposed under U.S. law. We have filed disputes underscoring that they are in violation of our free trade agreement, CUSMA. We have gone to the World Trade Organization because these actions are against international trade law. We are responding today with, and we have responded throughout, with carefully calibrated and targeted counter tariffs. Hier, j'ai rencontré mon conseil sur les relations canado-américaines. J'ai tenu une rencontre du comité du Conseil des ministres sur les relations canado-américaines. J'ai aussi convoqué les premiers ministres des provinces et territoires pour la troisième fois en autant de semaines. Nous sommes unis. Nous sommes déterminés. As I told President Trump during our call last week, Canada will respond to the U.S. auto tariffs. And today I'm announcing that the Government of Canada will be responding by matching the U.S. approach, with 25% tariffs on all vehicles imported from the United States that are not compliant with CUSMA, our North American Free Trade Agreement, and on the non-Canadian content of CUSMA-compliant vehicles from the United States as well. Our tariffs, though, unlike the U.S. tariffs, will not affect auto parts because we know the benefits of our integrated production system. And they will also not affect vehicle content from Mexico, who is respecting the CUSMA agreement. And as well, we are developing a framework for auto producers in Canada to get relief from these counter tariffs as long as they maintain their production and investment in our country. Importantly, every single dollar raised from those counter tariffs, our counter tariffs, which could reach around $8 billion before remission, will go directly to our auto workers and the companies affected by those tariffs. And that's on top of a $2 billion fund that we announced last week to build a made-in-Canada auto sector, a fund that a new Liberal government would implement should we be elected. Nos droits de douane n'affecteront pas les pièces automobiles, car nous connaissons les avantages de notre système de production intégré. Ils n'affecteront pas le contenu des véhicules en provenance du Mexique. Parallèlement, nous élaborerons une carte permettant aux constructeurs automobiles d'éviter nos droits de douane compensatoires à condition qu'ils maintiennent leur production et leurs investissements au Canada. Il est important de noter que chaque dollar récolté, c'est-à-dire environ 8 milliards de dollars avant remise, ira directement à nos travailleurs de l'automobile et aux entreprises touchées par ces droits de douane. Cela s'ajoute au fonds de 2 milliards de dollars pour construire un nouveau secteur automobile fabriqué au Canada, que j'ai annoncé qu'un nouveau gouvernement libéral mettrait en œuvre si nous étions élus. Our retaliatory tariffs that we previously announced in response to the United States' other tariffs will remain in effect. You know, we take these measures reluctantly, and we take them in ways that it's intended and will cause maximum impact in the United States and minimum impact here in Canada. And we should be aware that the President and his administration have also signaled that tariffs will be applied on what the Americans term as strategic sectors: pharmaceuticals, semiconductors, lumber, and agriculture. Dans les jours et les semaines à venir, nous dirons à nos homologues américains que ce serait une erreur, que la question de l'offre n'est pas sur la table, que toute nouvelle mesure commerciale entraînerait une réponse calibrée, mais énergique, de la part du Canada, et que le moment est venu de renégocier en profondeur notre partenariat économique et de sécurité. As President Trump and I agreed last week, he and the Prime Minister of Canada will sit down immediately following the election to find areas of common ground and agreement in a new economic and security partnership. I told the President that I will be working hard for the next month to earn the right to represent Canada in those discussions, to get the best deal for Canada under the new U.S. approach. At the same time, Canada must be looking elsewhere to expand our trade, to build our economy, and to protect our sovereignty. Canada is ready to take a leadership role in building a coalition of like-minded countries who share our values. We believe in international cooperation. We believe in the free and open exchange of goods, services, and ideas. And if the United States no longer wants to lead, Canada will. Canada is strengthening our trading relationships with reliable partners. Plus tôt cette semaine, j'ai parlé à la présidente mexicaine, Madame Sheinbaum. Je viens de discuter aujourd'hui avec le chancelier allemand, Olaf Scholz. J'ai eu de nombreuses conversations avec la présidente de la Commission européenne, Ursula von der Leyen. Et dès ma première semaine en poste, j'ai rencontré le Premier ministre du Royaume-Uni, Keir Starmer, et le président français, Emmanuel Macron. Nous sommes tous opposés à l'approche du gouvernement américain. Et nous sommes tous en faveur d'échanges commerciaux libres et équitables. My government understands that Canadians hurt by the unjustified tariffs will need our support. And to our workers producing sustainable, high-quality lumber in Smithers, Prince George, and Elmsdale, to our workers extracting oil and gas around Fort McMurray and in northeastern BC, aux travailleurs dans les alumineries du Saguenay, to our workers at the steel mills in Hamilton, Sault Ste. Marie, et La Bosse, to our workers at auto assembly plants in Windsor, Ingersoll, and Oakville, to all our workers who might be worried about their next paycheck and their futures, the federal government will do everything in our power to protect you and your careers. In this new world, we have to look out for ourselves, and because we are Canadian, we will always look out for each other. La semaine dernière, j'ai annoncé plusieurs mesures ciblées pour soutenir les travailleurs et les entreprises directement touchées par la guerre commerciale de Président Trump. Pour les travailleurs, nous avons supprimé le délai d'une semaine pour obtenir l'assurance emploi. Nous avons fait en sorte qu'ils n'aient pas à épuiser leur indemnité, de part avant de toucher l'assurance emploi, et nous avons facilité l'accès à l'assurance emploi. Comme je l'ai dit et répété, mon gouvernement va utiliser chaque dollar tiré de nos contre-tarifs pour soutenir les travailleurs canadiens tant et aussi longtemps que cette guerre commerciale perdure. Nous allons aussi appuyer les entreprises canadiennes. Nous avons reporté les paiements d'impôts sur le revenu ainsi que les versements de la TPS et de la TVH pour les entreprises. Nous avons mis en place de nouvelles mesures pour leur fournir de liquidités, une aide financière importante qui va aider nos entreprises à braver cette tempête. Et nous avons augmenté le financement des agences de développement régional. Fighting back against U.S. tariffs and protecting our workers are our most immediate priorities. But they are not sufficient. Our task as a nation in the coming weeks and months and years is to think bigger and to act bigger. We can draw strength right now from each other. From Canadians who are supporting local businesses, Canadians who are buying Canadian, Canadians who are changing their travel plans, and Canadians who are helping each other as neighbors. We are powerful when we act together. From providing refuge to stranded passengers in Gander to fighting forest fires in California, Canadians have done extraordinary things for Americans when they needed it most. Now, more than ever, we need to do extraordinary things for ourselves. We will need to do things previously thought impossible at speeds we haven't seen in generations. Breaking down internal trade barriers so that we can have one Canadian economy, not 13. Making Canada more productive and competitive. Building things in this country again. Millions more homes. Building clean and conventional energy. Building more public transport, more mines, more assembly lines. Building new trade corridors with reliable partners. Building a Canada that works for everyone. A Canada that everyone can afford. A Canada worthy of its people. Last week, I met a teacher from Glen Williams Public School in Georgetown, Ontario. And she told me about a routine assignment, that she had given to her 9- and 10-year-olds. And the children were asked to describe their dreams for Canada. So some kids wrote about a country free of poverty, others dreamt of clean air and water, or a place where everyone enjoyed equal rights, dignity, and respect. These are what we all want for ourselves and for each other. But many also wrote about tariffs and threats to our sovereignty, words that I hadn't met at that age. And I'm going to quote one which is representative. I dream of a safe, a kind, and a clean Canada. A Canada that is not the U.S. Our children should be able to dream about a positive future, not worry about an economic crisis. Les Canadiens et Canadiennes sont inquiets, et c'est normal quand il y a des grands changements. Ce n'est pas nous qui avons changé. Nous sommes restés les mêmes fiables, fiers et forts. Nous vivons dans un nouveau monde, et ça vient avec nouveaux défis. Given the prospective damage to their own people, the American administration should eventually change course. But I don't want to give false hope. The President believes that what he is doing is best for the American economy. He believes that it's best for American workers. And although their policy will hurt American families, until that pain becomes impossible to ignore, I do not believe they will change direction. So the road to that point may indeed be long. And it will be hard on Canadians, just as it will be on other partners of the United States. It will require us to make difficult choices. It will require sacrifices. I have no doubt we will rise to the challenge, because that's who we are as Canadians. We have done hard, seemingly impossible things throughout our history. We conquered the unconquerable at Vimy and Juno Beach. Nous avons bâti un pays qui unit des langues, des cultures et des croyances différentes. Et en le faisant, nous sommes devenus plus forts. We created public Medicare. We confronted our own past with Indigenous peoples. We answered the call to defeat fascism. We know we are not always perfect, but we always strive to be good. We do not do things because they're easy, but because they are right. We will rise to meet this challenge, and we will emerge stronger. So to those kids at Glenn Williams Public School, don't worry. With your spirit, with that of your parents, their friends, and people like them across this great country, all pulling for Canada, we will build an even better Canada for your future, because that's who we are. We are Canada. Canada strong, a Canada fort. Thank you very much. Merci. I'll be pleased to take your questions.
Bonjour tout le monde. We'll now start with the press conference. We'll take 15 minutes of questions, one question, one follow-up. On a 15 minutes, une question et une suivi. Laurence.
Merci.
Bonjour, M. Carney. Laurence Martin de Radio-Canada. Il n'y a pas eu de recul, vous l'avez dit, il n'y a pas eu de recul de M. Trump sur les tarifs déjà annoncés pour le Canada, comme sur le secteur de l'auto. Est-ce que ça veut dire que votre appel avec M. Trump la semaine dernière, finalement, n'a pas été si productif que ça?
Je crois que vous avez raison, et comme je viens de décrire, il n'y a pas de recul des tarifs par rapport au fentanyl, l'acier, l'aluminium et puis le secteur automobile. L'appel avec Monsieur le Président, nous avons fait de progrès. On peut le voir avec le résultat par rapport les tarifs réciproques. Nous avons eu le meilleur accord d'une série de mauvais accords. Ça, c'est la vérité dans ce cas. Première chose. Deuxièmement, nous sommes d'accord, Monsieur le Président et moi, nous sommes d'accord qu'au début de mai, il y aura le commencement des discussions globales en ce qui concerne le partenariat économique et sécuritaire du Canada et les États-Unis. Alors, encore, ça c'est du progrès, parce qu'on ne peut pas faire de progrès avec chaque initiative, chaque enjeu. Il faut avoir une discussion globale entre les deux pays souverains.
In English before my
You're absolutely right. The core tariffs with respect to fentanyl, automobiles, steel and aluminum remain in place with respect to an enormous series of trade measures that were announced yesterday. We have the best deal of a series of tough deals, bad deals in many respects. That is progress. That is recognizing the partnership. As well, what was also progress in the call the President and I had last week is this agreement that we will sit down, future Prime Minister and him as President will sit down and begin negotiations on the overall economic and security partnership with Canada. And that's important, in my judgment, because we will not make progress on individual items. We can only make progress as a whole in a relationship that is being redefined. And of course, as I said in my remarks, and as I said to the President, and as I said at the time, I'm working hard to ensure, or to earn the right, rather, to represent Canada at those negotiations.
Et en suivi, est-ce que vous songez à imposer une réponse coordonnée avec d'autres pays contre les États-Unis?
À ce moment-ci, non. En bref, non. On a des discussions. J'ai plusieurs discussions avec l'autre chef d'État, chef de gouvernement en Europe, au Mexique et d'autres parts du monde. Mais ils sont des discussions positives. Comment on peut augmenter les relations commerciales entre notre pays ou nos juridictions? Ce n'est pas afin d'avoir une réponse négative ou coordonnée par rapport aux États-Unis. OK? Merci.
Bonjour, Émilie Bergeron de la presse canadienne. Votre prédécesseur, Justin Trudeau, avait invité les autres chefs de parti à des rencontres conjointes pour montrer que le Canada est uni, qu'il y a un front uni face à M. Trump. Pourquoi, si vous mettez votre campagne électorale sur pause et que vous êtes dans vos habits de premier ministre et que vous dites que c'est un enjeu non partisan, alors pourquoi vous ne faites pas comme M. Trudeau et vous invitez les autres chefs de parti soit à une rencontre ou à un appel?
Les autres chefs du parti sont avisés de notre réponse. En ce qui concerne la coordination canadienne, j'ai plusieurs discussions avec tous les premiers ministres des provinces et territoires en groupe et dans un sens bilatéral, des discussions avec des chefs des syndicats, des chefs, des dirigeants autochtones, des PDG, tout cela. Il y a beaucoup de consultations, coordination. Et nous avons une équipe canadienne par rapport aux États-Unis. Et si je peux dire, la réunion aujourd'hui des premiers ministres était fantastique dans un sens, parce que nous sommes tous alignés. OK.
Ça n'a pas vraiment répondu à ma question, mais je vais aller sur un autre sujet, la gestion de l'œuf.
Pardon.
Vous avez dit que vous voulez protéger la gestion de l'œuf, mais est-ce que vous vous engagez, si vous êtes élu premier ministre du prochain gouvernement, à déposer un projet de loi, comme il y en avait un devant la Chambre des communes au Sénat, pour vraiment l'inscrire dans une loi que la gestion de l'œuf, c'est une ligne rouge, ça ne peut pas faire partie d'une négociation commerciale, puisque le gouvernement précédent, le gouvernement sortant, avait voté pour un tel projet de loi. Donc, est-ce que vous vous engagez à redéposer? OK.
On commence avec le fait que c'est un nouveau gouvernement. Il y a des changements. Nouveau premier ministre, nouveau gouvernement. Et en ce qui concerne les négociations avec les États-Unis, dès que le 1er janvier ou le mi-janvier, en effet, quand j'ai commencé ma campagne pour la chefferie libérale, j'ai dit clairement que la gestion de l'œuf, la langue française et la culture ne seront jamais sur la table. Ça, c'est une ligne rouge, une ligne claire. Et nous n'avons pas, par exemple, les discuté, Monsieur le Président et moi, pendant notre appel. Okay?
Good morning, Tonda McCharles, Toronto Star. Could you please expand and be specific on what you mean by an economic and security agreement? is that a new CUSMA, or is that some other deal that renegotiates NORAD or some other broader security agreement?
So it's, from our perspective, if I may, that there have been so many, I would say from our perspective as government, my personal perspective, also from the perspective of workers, businesses, investors, Canadians, there have been so many violations, outright violations of CUSMA. There's supposed to be, I'll give you one example, one of many examples, but for steel and aluminum, there is an explicit side letter in CUSMA which says that there needs to be 60-day consultations for any changes. That obviously was not the case. There are many other examples of this. There have been so many of these violations that there is a need to have a renegotiation and a reaffirmation of which elements of the commercial relationship, the trading relationship, stand. Now, they may change, given the objectives of the United States. They may change, given, in fact, I think they will change from our perspective as well, in terms of what we need to do that's best for Canada, given the new U.S. position on so many things. As well, it is sensible, in my judgment, that we also discuss defense and security partnership. We have a long-standing defense and security partnership. Some of that partnership is for security, but it's also a commercial relationship. And we want to make sure that commercial relationship works for Canada. I will observe that 80%, 80 cents on every dollar that we spend on military equipment in its broadest sense goes to the United States. In the current stance of the relationship, that doesn't make sense. So we want to sit down and have everything on the table and have that discussion, everything on the table within commercial, subject to my previous response to the last question.
So I understand that not to be all balled up in one agreement, separate agreements, but in the future negotiation then, I want to understand what you take from President Trump's 12% reciprocal tariff, sort of that he has hanging over Canada, even if he lifts the border tariffs you call unjustified.
So I think there are several things, if I may, and it's hard to predict all elements of this, but there's certain sectors in the North American economy, the Canadian-U.S. economy, that fundamentally rely on the integration in those sectors. There's no better example of this than in autos, where it literally has been built up over my entire lifetime. And that the competitive threat in North America is from Asia, not within North America. And it will become our judgment, and the judgment, I would say, of virtually everybody who works in the auto industry, virtually everyone, not everyone, not the UAW apparently, but I think they're going to find out, that this is going to damage the U.S. auto industry as well as the Canadian auto industry. And it's going to damage the industry relative to competition from Asia. So when there's that discussion, the question, part of the discussion is going to be, how do we put back together elements of that integration? And if it's not going to come, how are we going to act in Canada? And we're going to do this, elements of this anyways, if my government is elected, which is to build a true Made in Canada strategy that makes us much more resilient with the U.S. So, Tonda, I can't pre-wire all those discussions, but what I know is that trying to have a discussion, given the scale of ambition of the United States, given all the measures they've taken, not just against Canada, but against the whole world, that we are not going to make progress if we try to focus on only one issue. We need to reset the overall relationship. We need to set the boundaries around that, where we're going to work together, reestablish confidence, first and foremost for Canadian workers and their families, so that they know where their careers are, where their jobs are, and then more broadly for investors in business. Okay? Thank you.
Good morning, Prime Minister. Gillian Piper with Global News. Are you planning to have another phone call with President Donald Trump to discuss these tariffs? If it's appropriate, we will. We agreed that we would, when we last spoke, that we would talk as needed over the coming weeks. So it may happen. There's not one scheduled. And as I said, I'll just reiterate, when we spoke,
I did advise the President that we would be retaliating against the auto tariffs. We were going to wait to see what happened with these reciprocal tariffs that were announced yesterday. We have taken a very focused, calibrated response, balanced response, one that creates incentives for the automakers. So as appropriate, we will speak. I'm very conscious, we're very conscious that there are additional measures likely to come in other sectors, including forest products, pharmaceuticals, and others.
You said previously that the relationship that Canada had with the United States is now over. Is the U.S. still our ally?
The U.S. Absolutely. Look, the U.S. is absolutely our ally. It's our ally in security and defense partnerships. It's our most important security ally, for example. It's still, even with these tariffs, the largest trading partners. The point I made last week, the point I made again today, is part of what our relationship has been based on, though, has been a degree of integration between our economies, our trade becoming closer and closer together. That is over. I mean, we saw that that was ending a while ago. It's now emphatic. I think the world is learning that that is over. That creates real challenges for us. We're not sugarcoating it. We're absolutely clear about that. It also, though, creates an enormous opportunity for a country like Canada, which has virtually everything that the world wants, has a lot of things that the U.S. wants, and they're going to find out how much they want it with these tariffs. So we have virtually everything the world wants. And when I talk to leaders in Europe, when I talk to the Mexican president, they want to work with us. They want to cooperate with us. And I'll say one other thing, if I may, and then hand, which is one of the things, and I'll go back to Team Canada, Premier Smith, Premier Moe, Monsieur le Premier Ministre Legault, all of those premiers in the very short term either have just gone on major trade initiatives to Europe in some cases, or about to go to trade missions in Asia. That's the Team Canada approach. That's the coordinated approach that we need. And I think Canadians, again, not sugarcoating the challenges, but can be very encouraged about the sense of purpose and action at different levels to move forward. Enfin, les alliés ou oui, les États-Unis, bien sûr, les États-Unis est encore un allié du Canada. Les États-Unis, c'est notre allié la plus importante en ce qui concerne les matières de sécurité et de la défense, par exemple. Mais le monde change. OK. Ashley, please.
Ashley Burke, CBC News. Good morning. You have talked about this, the old relationship when it comes to the tight military and security cooperation being over. So what exactly are you picturing, and what does that mean for NORAD?
Well, first and foremost, what I've emphasized has been the commercial relationship, the trading relationship, and the direction of that relationship. It was only a few months ago that many responded to the initial U.S. tariffs and discussions of tariffs by saying, this was not me, to be clear, but some prominent Canadians said, well, we should have a customs union with the United States. We should become closer to the United States. It's clear that that strategy has tremendous risks, would be misguided, in my view, and misguided and create tremendous risk. There may be certain sectors where that's the case, but as an overall approach, that view, that relationship's over. As I just said, our military and security relationship is still, with the United States, is still our most important one, without question. So I didn't declare the end of that, and I'm not declaring the end of that. What I have emphasized, and my government has taken action on, is diversifying and reinforcing other aspects of our security partnership. So we signed a major defense agreement with Australia, over the horizon radar. My trips to Paris and London were partly about deepening our security partnerships with those countries. We're looking on diversification in terms of maritime procurement and other aspects of procurement. We're reviewing the F-35 fighters to make sure that that's the right approach for the country going forward, given the other considerations.
Last question.
Yeah.
You talked about how long and hard the road could be for Canadians if Mr. Trump keeps these tariffs in place. How long and hard, and is Canada headed towards a recession? Well,
look, I think it starts with what the implications of these tariffs, yesterday's tariffs, which affect all economy, virtually every economy in the world, means for the global economy and the U.S. economy and a U.S. economy which is slowing, U.S. economy where inflation is starting to pick up, where financial conditions are going to start to tighten, and a U.S. economy which has a possibility of tipping into recession themselves. So it starts there. It is usually the case that when the United States has a recession, that it's very difficult for Canada to avoid something similar. There's been exceptions to that. With the financial crisis, 2008-9, when I was governor, we avoided a recession. We need to take action now for short-term support and reimagine our economy for the medium term. And I won't go through the list of things. You personally have had to hear them a few times, but it is about that one Canadian economy, and it's about building everything from homes to new energy infrastructure to new ports and trade infrastructure. By doing that, and by doing that in a way that is as coordinated and impactful and immediate as possible, we create a real possibility, in fact, probability. It's not just right for the medium term, but it's right for the short term. And that, in many ways, is what's at stake right now. Yes, we have to respond to the U.S., and we are responding appropriately. Yes, absolutely, first and foremost, protect our workers. But we need to do much more than that, which is to build this economy. And in doing that, we can avoid the slowdown that is coming. Well, we can do better than the United States. That's my point. We can do better than the United States. Exactly where that comes out depends on how much damage they do to their economy.
Thanks, everyone. That
En
concludes.
français, sur le dernier aspect, en ce qui concerne le taux de croissance à l'échelle globale, ce qui est sûr est que les tarifs américains vont desserrer au moins l'économie mondiale, y compris et surtout l'économie américaine. Et à ce moment-ci, l'économie américaine ralentit et l'inflation aux États-Unis augmente. Alors, c'est une combinaison très difficile pour eux. Et c'est avant d'avoir des grands tarifs. Dans ces circonstances, normalement, il y a un fort ralentissement de l'économie canadienne. Mais on l'a évité en 2008, quand j'étais gouverneur de la Banque du Canada, et nous pouvons réduire l'impact négatif, des retombées négatives de l'économie américaine d'ici au Canada avec de la force, de la force économique, y compris tous les volets afin de bâtir une économie forte.
Okay, thanks,
C'est
everyone.
tout? Yeah.
Sorry, we're done. Sorry. Thank you.
Sorry.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, merci. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. Bonjour. Yesterday marked the latest in President Trump's unprecedented series of U.S. tariffs that are designed to reshape the international trading system. The ambition of these measures is enormous. The effects on the global economy will be monumental. We received confirmation that the latest reciprocal tariffs will not be imposed on Canada. At the same time, President Trump confirmed that the tariffs announced last week against our auto industry will come in, and indeed have come into effect today. So while it's progress that further tariffs were not imposed on Canada yesterday, the President's actions will reverberate here in Canada and across the world. Three different sets of U.S. tariffs will continue to pose significant threats to Canadian workers and Canadian businesses. And while they have been imposed under different premises, some things are consistent. They are all unjustified, and we are already seeing the consequences. Just last evening, workers from Unifor Local 444, with whom I met last week, learned that their auto assembly plant in Windsor will be shutting down for at least the next 2 weeks. That's 3,600 tariff proceeds will go to protect workers affected by the tariffs. Les premiers tarifs ont été annoncés en février. L'administration Trump, ils ont été mis en place en réponse au trafic de fentanyl qui aurait lieu à notre frontière commune. Pourtant, qui honte aux États-Unis vient du Canada. Et malgré ce fait, le gouvernement précédent a agi dès décembre avec un plan frontalier robuste d'une vigueur des drones et des équipes canines pour détecter et empêcher le trafic de fentanyl et des produits chimiques utilisés pour produire cette drogue. That plan is working, as U.S. Customs and Border Protection themselves have to that country. Just last night, the U.S. Senate made it clear that these tariffs are a mistake. The Senate voted to repeal them in a symbolic but important assertion of both fact and solidarity. The second set of U.S. tariffs were imposed in March on him during his first term, a process which led to thousands of lost jobs in America. Then, as now, those tariffs were in clear violation of trading agreements today. Last week, the President and his administration announced their third set of tariffs, this time against auto imports. Where I was born, Canada and the United States signed the Auto Pact, an agreement that ended auto tariffs between our nations and began a 60-year period, you can guess my age, a 60-year period of close cooperation, partnership, job growth, and prosperity. And that era has now ended unless the United States and Canada can agree on a new comprehensive approach. Yesterday's actions by the U.S. administration, while not specifically targeting Canada, will rupture the global economy and adversely affect global economic growth. The global economy is fundamentally different today than it was yesterday. The system of global trade anchored on the United States that Canada has relied on since the end of the Second World War, period when the United States embraced the mantle of global economic leadership, when it forged alliances rooted in trust and mutual respect, and championed the free and open exchange of goods and services, is over. Well, this ministre des Provinces et Territoires pour la troisième fois en autant de semaines. Nous sommes unis. Nous sommes déterminés. As I told President Trump during our call last week, Canada will